The following is our extended conversation with Ela Ben-Ur, the creator of Innovators Compass. Welcome, I'm Dave,
I'm John.
and this is Teaching Like Ted Lasso. I always love talking to this guest. We first met like 5 years ago, and I don't think it's an overstatement to say that you have changed me professionally, changed me personally. I'm just so grateful for this opportunity. The Teaching Like Ted Lasso podcast is happy to welcome Ela Ben-Ur. Hi, Ella.
Hello. I think it's worth saying that I think we met through a podcast, didn't we?
Yeah, I listened to you on the Design Thinking 101 podcast. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, Ella?
My background is in design thinking from MIT and IDEO, but I have had the opportunity to work with many, many, many different people, many different experts, many different everyday people in the decade since that time. And I've made it my mission to try to make our best ways of getting unstuck accessible for every person and moment. I don't know how far back you want me to go, but that I think has always been my mission and what's really driven me in life way before MIT or IDEO, before those experiences. And so that has manifested into taking all these amazing things I've had the experiences with, from design thinking to leadership practices to, how people do therapy, how people make startups better, how people solve engineering problems, how people bring communities together and find that they seem to have some common questions that seem to be the compass that is the fundamental way we see anything we do, and they just bring us to see those and bring us back, frankly, because that's how kids navigate the world. They ask questions and they observe things and they experiment, and they really, all of these different ways of making things better are just reminding us to be our best selves. And so why don't we just name those common things that they're asking us to do and ask them more often?
Nice.
That became Innovators Compass, which is all free resources in innovatorscompass.org. But it's basically the mission work I do in the world, just making those best ways of getting unstuck accessible for every person and moment.
Are you familiar with Ted Lasso?
I have to confess that I have certainly heard of the show, but I have not watched that or really any television in a long time. Such is the nature of being, someone who's out to change the world. And also has two children, so I have not seen it, but I've heard wonderful things.
Yeah. Yeah. Change the world, watch a sitcom, what's the
A
choice?
world-changing sitcom, so I
Yeah.
mean, it would benefit me to watch it, but I have not.
Well, it's not a requirement for the podcast. We've had plenty of people on who haven't seen it. And again, the goal wasn't to necessarily just talk about the show. John and I yammer on about that plenty, but to think about connections that we know of between themes that are on the show and then people that we know who are either doing the work or researching the work. So definitely not a requirement, but if you ever do have, somebody posted that it's only, all three seasons are only 24 hours long. So if you're looking for a 24-hour splurge one time, you can do it in that. And I obviously I think that it's worth it, but yeah, if you get a chance, I think you would find the positive nature of it, and I think you'd see a lot of connections to just what you were talking about, goals of your own work. So, but one of the things that they do in the show is ask some kind of weird questions to get to know people, and one of those questions was your all-time favorite Julie Andrews character.
I think I've only really seen her in a couple of things, The Sound of Music and Mary Poppins. Maybe she's been like hidden in other roles that I've forgotten or didn't notice in the first place, but those are kind of both similar, right? They're both nannies.
Hmm.
Um, but I think if I had to pick between them, it would have to be Mary Poppins because, a little magic never hurts.
Interesting. Mine is one called SOB. She was in this movie in the 1980s, and it was kind of a cast against her type, that nanny type. But anyways, so you talked a little bit about Innovators Compass, Ella. Why did you develop this? And you've got this idea of supporting people, but why and how did you develop the compass?
Again, I guess it depends on how far you want to look back. The why has been, I think, a part of me for a really long time. I my parents are immigrants. My sister is a disabled woman, and I went to school deep in Milwaukee in a neighborhood with its challenges. And I think that, I think I saw a lot of both people stuck, but also people getting unstuck that inspired me a lot. And I think that that contrast was really deeply motivating to me. And it was human. It was about people, not processes and problems. And then, I went my wayward way, which is, don't get me wrong. Actually, I really appreciate everything that I did and developed and everything else at MIT and IDEO. But when I left those institutions, I went back out in the world and was just back out there to just sort of help, in whatever way, whether it was me or design thinking that I brought with me or whatever it was, how can I help people, get unstuck? And I've started to, overall my years while I was at IDEO, I was there for 13 years. I was doing workshops, for IDEO for our clients, and I was teaching at Olin College, and with a lot of stuff, like all the trappings of the lingo of design thinking. In fact, half your listeners may never have heard of design thinking, and it's fine, it doesn't matter. When I left, I found that I had a real kind of allergy to teaching,
Mm.
and to seeing and hearing people, go through things like, wait, what are we doing? Or how does this relate to, my daily life? Or this isn't quite how I'm creative. Like I was just having an amazing conversation with my partner and then you cut me off. Like those moments were just really like, I don't think this is why I'm in this work. I don't think this is what I'm here for. And so I couldn't articulate it this way until later, but I really started to desperately want to unleash and not teach. I was pretty sure that all the humans in the classroom or conference room or whatever place I was, there with me, had plenty in them to be able to unstick their own challenges. And my goal was, that they didn't have to get stuck on the stuff that I was sharing and have to figure out what I was saying and what I meant, and how to do it before they could start like just unsticking their own stuff. And that was really hard. But that was one big why. And the other was that I just felt like there was so much amazingness out there that you either start to try to teach everything, like thousands of methods from lots of different processes, like, oh my gosh, but you got to see this and you got to see this, and oh, this is what community organizers do, and this is what therapists do, and this is what leadership trainers do. Whew, and you just like load people down with more and more stuff, or it forces you to go to completely the other way and try to sense, well, what, I think behind all this sort of specialized words and ways that those people all go about helping people make things better and get unstuck, there's something in common. And the clue for me was really in what it felt like for myself as a designer at IDEO. What did it feel like? What were the creative moves that got us unstuck from what is happening right now, like being able to see that in new ways and see new futures and make those happen? What did that actually feel like? And I started to sort of sense the compass in that and see that same compass in so many other ways of making things better alone and together in our life, work, and world. And so then I became just fascinated with that and wanted to bring it out in a way that wasn't like hidden in all of these things, because they're not accessible to us when they're hidden in all these different books and processes, and they're also hidden inside us. Like I said, I had kids around the same time, and I could see that this is the way they operate, right? And it's hidden it's hidden deep inside us, and it gets kind of, this is cliche to say, but it gets kind of buried, and hidden away, through a lot of schooling, because it's not what's valued and celebrated and developed. And so it's hidden in all these places that we cannot access it, but we really have all the ingredients, and they are the same things that, all these different processes and tools and books are telling us to do again, because we haven't developed them. We haven't had the chance to practice them from when we were little. So those were some of the drivers that really made me want to just be like, okay, let's figure out what this compass is, and let's find out how to represent it in a way that is immediately usable and shareable by any person in any situation. And that was really hard. It turned out it took a bunch of years to get to what seems amazingly deceptively simple,
Mm-hmm.
but hopefully simple and powerful enough for any person and situation.
Yeah, and I can attest to when, like I said, when I heard you on that podcast, and I was familiar with design thinking, but you distilled it for me in a way that made sure that, like you said, the humanity was a part of it, right? And most design thinkers would, I think, would like to believe that they're doing human-centered design, but it was really clear in the way that you talked about it and the way that you presented it with those five simple questions. I love to as you said, I could pull from all of these different ways of thinking and say, oh, these are all distilled into these five questions and into these five areas. And it was something I'd spend, I'm a teacher. I've spent lots of time teaching people how to do, the D school version of it or Henry Ford version of it. And it always felt, I loved how you started this out. It always felt like we were getting caught up in the methods and not being able to really sort of think about it. But I've ever since, and this is why I said it's changed me professionally, ever since I've started sharing the compass with students and teachers, within 30 minutes they are able to start thinking about how to apply it to whatever way they either want to be unstuck or way they want to explore. So I guess all I want to do is affirm that that hard work at least is paid off for one person.
And it's really funny because you and I can both talk about it quite a bit because you have a lot of background in it, but typically people don't. So what happens most of the time with this tool is that people have a picture of it or they don't. And they just are in a situation on their own or with other people. It's a decision, it's a debate, it's planning, it's a moment in a meeting or a conversation, and they go, "Hey, let's use these, let's use this thing, let's use these five questions," and they just go. And that's really the manifestation of the mission right there. And so we've already talked about an awful lot, which can sometimes backfire because
Mhm.
sometimes it can make things feel more complicated when you talk about it and give it a lot of introduction. So in its simplest form, I've seen the wonderful Garrett Mason, who's taken the compass literally all over the world, has shared pictures of people in the organizations he works with who are, like sending pictures from new villages in rural Africa where people, have the sticker on the back of a phone being used to just guide a conversation, between people in a community. And it's literally just a sticker that's passing from person to person. And that is amazing. So yeah, so the hope is that it really is an unleash and it's nothing to teach. Like I do think that we ask these questions. Maybe without further ado, can I share Innovators Compass?
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
And for the people who are watching, I'm going to hold up an Innovators Compass. Literally, it says on top, 5 ways we move forward in any challenge, big or small. With and for everyone involved, we explore new possibilities in these 5 questions. It's a circle in the center, and it's red, and it has 2 people in it with little hearts in them. The question there is who's involved, or are people in any situation? And then there's this compass, and we go down to the lower left, and that brings us down to details. It's the bottom part of the compass, what's happening in the past and present, and we're looking to just see what's happening and why right now, right? Like just like go, someone came to you with a feeling down about something, you'd see them as a person first, and then you'd probably say, "Hey, what's happening?" Like try to understand, what's happening and why. Gather some real observations to go on. There's 2 pictures here, like an upper picture frame and a lower picture frame. You probably try to find some upsides that are happening and maybe some, what are the downsides of what's happening. You try to understand. Everybody does these things, right? Everybody says, "Hey, what's going on?" You look down. And then zooming up, the top of the compass is big picture. You went from details, you zoom up to big picture. Find the question, what matters most? Because we can get stuck overwhelmed with all the things that are happening. And so being able to see the big picture, hey, what matters most about all of that so that I can focus? There's a star here because those are your guiding stars or your North Star or the things that you star,
Mm.
like on your page, right? On your to-do list, the things that matter most, or some guiding principles, like guiding stars, guiding principles for yourself. And then we go over to the top right and we find we're still big picture, but now we're moving from past and present to the future. And we're looking for the big picture of what ways, plural, are there, to do what matters most, or ideas. And there's a fluffy, blue sky cloud here because these can be fluffy, dreamy, blue sky ideas. We have to have space to do that. We can be stuck, seeing no way or only one way to do what matters. Either of those is kind of stuck, right? Because if it's like my way or the highway, that doesn't work so well. Or just kind of like meh ways, right? That we're not really excited about, that aren't really, we're not going to get to the moon unless we shoot the stars, right? So that's that space. That's that space to dream. But we all ask that, like, okay, well, we really want to, like, go to New York. What ways are there to do that, right? We all ask these questions. None of them are rocket science. And then we come back down to details and of the future and say, okay, well, what's the step to try? Right? Like if we decide, oh, I think we're going to do the train. Well, we're not going to get on that train unless there's a who, what, when, where, how, to get on the train. It just remains an idea. So what's a step to try? And the picture here is a pile of blocks that are kind of tipping over. They go from big on the bottom to small on top. And they weren't tipping over until my then 4-year-old daughter said, well, experiments are kind of like, they don't usually work at first. Didn't that pile look like it's falling over? And I kind of cringed, which was exactly why I realized they should be falling over, because we need to get used to that. We need to be comfortable with that. And, it's the top one that's falling off. It's a little bitty one. It's no big deal, right? And, as you go, you build up, and the blocks get more solid and you have bigger blocks, and you'll build your way there. This is just the first step, and you'll learn from it and you'll go on. And so while they are numbered, because that is the way that most processes will have you go, the safe thing to do is see people, what's happening for them, what matters most for them before you start throwing out a bunch of ideas to change things. But they're really just 5 ways that we move forward, and we use these piecemeal all the time, right? Like, your kid like start listing all the things that they want to do or they need to do, and you're like, okay, well, which one matters most to you right now? You ask these questions all the time when you get unstuck, when you move forward in powerful ways, and when we don't, we're missing something somewhere. So let's just name them. My call before this was some people who are doing, working with some community organizing practices that are, asking the same questions in their own sort of different ways. So that is an Innovators Compass. It's 5 questions that move us forward.
And I would again say that your idea of that it's piecemeal, I think I've shared this with you before. Looking at it, I can say that I've lived on the bottom of your compass, right? I spent a lot of time with observations and experiments in details, right? But didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the top. And my spouse, Kathy, she lives on the top, right? She thinks big ideas, and she's got, she knows what, the general principle is, and she comes up with all these ideas. And for a long time, we didn't always see eye to eye on stuff, as you would imagine, right? Until we were able to see, I wish I could say it was just the compass. It was therapy too, but the compass helped us to see that we were doing all of those things, that we would benefit from being able to know where we were and do all of those things and not just do part of it, right? And I think that that's one of the things that we're trying to get through this podcast, and in particular through this episode, is really help teachers see what it takes to be experimenters in their own classrooms, right? To go through the compass and use all of those parts. But if they're not willing to do the experimenting piece, if they're just saying, here's what I want to teach, and here may be some ways to do it, but they're really not observing what's going on with their students and things like that, that they're not going to make the progress that we're hoping that they make. That the show that Ted Lasso is trying to show in their 3-season arc is the progress that people are making because they are trying to experiment. Again, I want to affirm what you're saying, or I don't want to gloss over. All 5 of those questions are important, and our participants will have a chance to look at all 5 of them. But if you were going to give some, in particular, I've heard you give some very good detail about how to do the experiment part. I think that would be helpful.
Everything that I said till now about it is, I was looking literally at the questions and the pictures on this graphic, right? A lot of time went into trying to pack as much as possible into that really, portable, shareable bit so that it doesn't, it shouldn't feel like, oh, I need Ella there to tell me how to experiment, because that defeats the mission. Well, first, let me just back up and say, with regard to what you just said, which is, yeah, I think once we can see all these things, then it's a lot easier to just sort of, whether it's individually or collectively, be like, hey, I think, we've been doing a lot of this and we haven't been doing a lot of that, and just to kind of just keep consciously using them as we get bigger, as our challenges get bigger, then all those muscles will be strong. And we can't, if you don't know you have them, right, you can't consciously strengthen them. So I hope that will kind of be a way of the future for education and lots of other things. So as far as prompts around them to go deeper, I again try to keep things really, really simple and accessible. So there are these little cue cards you can find on the website. There's not too many of them. Even simpler, there's this pocket compass. So I'm holding up a couple of things for people who are listening. Oh, look, there's Dave's pocket compass right behind him on the shelf. So the pocket compass is just like a little folded business card, but you can print them out online, and they have like just one extra sentence underneath each of the questions. And then the cue cards are like the next and last sort of level of detail that I provide, because once it gets more than that, there's a lot of great stuff out there that will get really detailed, right? So that's not my mission. I'll happily point you to like, oh, you're really interested in details of facilitation, like here are 5 ways to go find that. But so there are these cue cards, and that's what I just want to make sure that people know that what I'm saying is coming from somewhere so they can go find it and use it. So the main one just adds one really simple, kind of almost silly seeming thing to the compass, right? So these 5 questions: who's involved, what's happening, why, what matters most, what ways are there, what's the step to try. Well, as I said, the one instruction on top of every single form of Innovators Compass is with and for all involved, explore. And to me, one of the simplest ways to think about how to explore any of these things is, first of all, to use periods to unpack what you think, but then look for some exclamation points, some ahas, right? Like find new possibilities. And then the last one, but really the most exciting one, is the question mark. When in doubt, let it out. Just pop a question mark on it when you don't know, or to let thoughts come and go, right? Like being the perfect parent or teacher, if that's one of your principles, pop a question mark on it and see what it opens up for you. It's really kind of amazing. So then my prompts in the pocket compass are really just how to find more of those ahas. And then this cue card has 2 prompts for each of the spaces for each of the questions. One is to find more exclamation points, more ahas, the same thing that's in the pocket compass. And then there's a prompt around question marks, how to find those. So this is the greatest detail. So I'm going to literally read what is on here about experiments. So experiments, what's a step to try? So the exclamation point aha tip is make it small. Think $1, 1 day, 1 person, or 1 part of an idea. And it's pointing to the little bitty cube, the little bitty block on the top of the stack. And now pointing to details, small with specific details. So small and specific, like who, what, when, where, how, until you'll try it. If it's not happening yet, it needs to be smaller and or more specific until it happens. Like, oh yeah, I can do that. Oh, I just did that. Look at that. How cool is that, right? So that's the aha. That's the aha, right? That you come to, like, oh my God, I just did that. The question mark prompt is to focus on the question marks you found above, right? So when you were like, oh, I'm actually not really sure what's happening. I don't know why he's late to school every day, question mark. Or do I have to be the perfect mom? I don't know, right? Or with ideas, right? If you let out that question, like I could have 10,000 elephants at the birthday party, and I put a question mark on it because that's how I let it out. Now you have all these question marks that you've collected. And so the question mark tip is simply to focus on question marks that you found before and then go back and see what happens, right? So an experiment can be trying out part of an idea, but it might actually be finding out more about what's happening. Like, I'm going to go try asking, I'm going to try watching and see which days he's late and not and why, or I'm going to go ask him more about it. That can be an experiment. It doesn't have to be trying out an idea. But that's it. Those are the 2 tips. I said them in a very long way, but if you read them, there's just a couple sentences there. Make it small, $1 a day, person or part of idea, with specific details like who, what, when, or how, until you try it. And focus on questions you found and go see what happens again.
When I've seen you present on this, Ella, you often, when we're into that experiment piece, ask them to think about something that they can specifically do in the next week. Do you still try to do that? Do you still espouse that as you're doing that work?
Yeah, I really love, so here I say small and specific. So they have to pick a who, what, when, where, and how. And I guess it doesn't technically have to be in the next week, but it's good if it is. I do really like the framing that I've heard of someday and Monday. So the someday is like the ideas space, right? All these ways I could possibly do this someday. And experiments is like the Monday, right? Like, so you have to pick a specific when, and no, it probably shouldn't be in 3 weeks because you're going to completely forget about it by then. Or it's too big, right? If you think that it's going to take you 3 weeks, to be able to do this thing, maybe what can you try that's smaller? That is right now. And the best is if it's in the next 24 hours, because that's when you'll remember it, or the very next thing you do.
Well, and I remember being at South by Southwest with you and talking to someone who was thinking about starting a school and wanted to use the compass for that. And they're like, "Do I actually have to start the school to be able to do that?" And we talked about those question marks, right? Yeah, no. Well, I guess that would be one way. Yeah, we talked about one of the question marks, and this says, so what are your questions about it? And maybe your experiment is addressing and finding out more answers to those questions, right? Like what do investors think? What do parents think? So maybe your experiment is to come up with something again that they could do within the next when they got home from Austin, where they could do something immediately and not, just sit around wondering about, well, should I start the school or not, without getting more information.
Anybody can do that same coaching that you just did. You'd be like, well, let's focus on those questions and what's the small specific thing that you could do. That's what you did, right?
Right.
What you did is what's in these cues.
What the compass did for me was help me to, it was more of a metacognitive tool to make sure that I was thinking about my own thinking or helping other people think about theirs. And again, this is where I see a real connection between you and the show. Ted Lasso at the end talks about it was never about me, right? He was always trying to help everybody, like you were saying, sort of find that answer within themselves. And as a coach or as a teacher or as a leader, it's simply helping people to, you know, to become obsolete ourselves so that those, like you said, you don't want Ella to always have to be there.
And I think that you use the word think a bunch, right? Thinking about my own thinking. And I think that's true. And I feel that people are more likely to be able to own it and, well, re-own it, right? Like own this because you already have and use it in a lot of different situations and use it powerfully if they can feel it. And
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons this is not a list of questions, but it is a visual spatial compass so that you can feel, that you are diving down for details, like both experiments and observations. Those are at the bottom, those are details, right? Both of them are down in the details. We know kind of what that feels like when your head's down, you're just really paying attention. These different pictures, right, for each one help them feel real because they are actually how you see what's happening and why your observations are as real a tool as a hammer in the
Mhm.
world. They can be if you are aware of them and you see them and you use them, and they are. And so, by giving them a physical picture, it's not just so that you go, oh, yeah, observations are different pictures of what's happening and why, but also so they feel like a thing that you can make a difference with, right? Like the stars, those things I star, they can guide me and they can guide other people too, right? Those clouds, those can inspire me. They can like free me to think in different ways, and they can do that for other people too. So both the compass, the motions we have, right, when you're going down into details and you're zooming out to see what matters most, and zooming over to see, what matters, what ways there are to do that, right, in the future, but still big picture, right, and zooming back down into details. Like I think that there's 1,000 cliches around each one of these things that basically, why am I saying zooming in, zooming out, seeing the forest for the trees, right? Like seeing big picture. It's because we have a whole bunch of cliches to try to help us feel those moves that we need to make to get unstuck. That's why we have them, because that's our shorthand for helping people get unstuck, right? Okay, you need to pull your head out of the sand and like see the big picture. I'm probably mixing my metaphors now, but so this is trying to embody the feel of all of that in addition to kind of the thinky. I have a long way of experiment of explaining things. Sorry.
No, I love that, and that's really helpful because I'm sure that I do spend, like I said, I spend my time in the details, and I also spend my time in my head. I realize that, and so being able to move from the head to the heart to the gut, that's one of those things that at one point Ted says to another character is this idea: start with your head, go with your gut, but take a stop at your heart. So making sure that you're paying attention to all parts of that.
I do have to watch this show.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. So it probably sounds extremely like a lot of hubris and oversimplified to say that like all these ways from therapy to leadership to everything, really boil down to these 5 questions. They do. And where they get really deep is, first of all, in this compass, right? Like really helping you go for details really getting you to dream big for your ideas, right? They push you really hard in these directions. That's what their coaching, their guidance, all of the tools that they give you will do. And they get you to engage more of your own tools to get there, right? If the compass is like the directions they point you in, like getting you to go really hard and clear in those directions, the fuel is all on you, right? They can't give it to you. It's in you, it's on you. It's the stuff that it's the tools that you've always been carrying. So this is a picture I'm holding up that has what I call our 10 plus tools, because this is 10, but of course we have many more. It shows that a person, same person that's in the middle of the compass, each person involved has, first of all, multiple processing tools, the ones that Dave just mentioned, our head, our heart, our gut, they all process in different ways. And so different approaches are going to try and get you to engage them. Like brainstorming really fast gets you to turn off your head a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
With your gut, because you just have to, right? You don't have time to think about it. So those are processing tools, as I call them. Then there's our tools that we use to interact with the world, right? To sense and act on the world. So our eyes, our ears, our bodies, and our hands. Coming from my own background in design thinking, they'll have you go look at what people are doing now, what's happening for people now. Go listen, go ask people lots of questions, go try to empathize, go do what they're doing and see how it feels to you, use your hands. And then the last set are the things that we can use that we always still have. We always have words. We have pictures that we can draw or find clip art or whatever, but we can use pictures. And we can use all of the stuff in the space around us at any time. So we can also draw what's happening and why for people involved. Or use words in different ways. Like we use our head and words way too much in general, but you can use words in really different ways. Like if you constrain people to just use one word or like, 2 words to describe how you're feeling right now, it really forces them to like go with their gut, right? And like figure out what are those things, what really does matter most to me. So it really is a lot of the really detailed tools and methods that people teach to make different things better in the world are getting us to engage these tools as fuel to get us to go further in these fundamental directions that are how we see anything we do.
Which really connects well with, the whole child sort of movement that education has been trying to go through. And one of the decisions, as John and I are thinking about the work that we do with teachers, is we want to make sure they don't just skip to the teaching of the kids, right? We want them to be also see themselves as whole people.
Yeah.
If we're asking them to give students more chance to play around with ideas, to be in the upper part of the compass, we need to give our teachers that opportunity to play around with ideas, right? We can't just give that lip service and to get to that, so kids can do this sort of thing. And so I appreciate that, again, we tend to focus so much with the work on the students, as it should be, right? The students are in the center, but educators are also in the center with them, and they need to give themselves permission. And we're hoping, this has been fun for us to do, but we're hoping that they find some of these things fun as well.
Yeah, and that's spot on the spirit of this with and for everyone involved. Explore. Teachers do it, parents do it, people in medical professions do it, right? Where they're completely focused on their kids or their patients. And, everyone involved is involved and they're equally involved. They may be in different positions of power. And so it is really important to elevate the needs and voices of the people who have less power. Totally. However, wherever you try to go, any ideas you have or experiments you try are not going to succeed if they don't work for everyone, right? Because they're going to get undermined, especially by those people in power if they're not well served by it. And we can only teach and share this stuff as much as we can do it, right? That's so expanding our own capacity is it's good for us, and it's also a very selfless way of being better teachers of this stuff and walking our talk. So I super agree, with what you say, and I always try to make sure that in like my workshops with educators, I invite them to first and foremost use it on whatever is most on their minds. What
Mm-hmm.
is most useful for you? You are stuck in this workshop or chose to be in this workshop for an hour. what is most useful for you to figure out, right? Like something that is either like an amazing opportunity you're really excited about, or something you're really worried about, or maybe a little bit of both, and you don't have it quite figured out yet. Let's do that, right? Let's focus on you. Let's help you feel these different emotions. We'll have you pair together and like push each other in these directions. Yes, and of course at the end we're going to reflect, which is my cheesy way of saying what you do when you're using Innovators Compass for reflection. The left side of the compass is kind of your normal reflection, right? What just happened for me, maybe what matters most to me about it. The right side is the action. Okay, so what ways are there for me to use what I just did in my life and work and world? What am I going to actually try on Monday, to use these 5 questions in some way? So yes, and then of course, when you do that, you should identify the 10,000 ways you want to use it in the classroom with your kids, and ways you want to use it, on your own with, say, with your family or your peers, or just in your own life. And you can totally like start working on those, but not until after you've given yourself the chance to do it for yourself on, whether it's your lesson planning. I know that's something that you think about, right? Using it for lesson planning, or use it for designing your vacation, or the challenge you're having with your spouse, or an issue you're seeing in your school that's really bothering you, or whatever it is.
Do you still use it with the kids to plan days?
Oh, like I did during COVID.
Yeah.
I use it every day myself. And I can tell when I haven't, because I feel like my day is swimming a little bit, or it just isn't as powerful as it could be. And we usually use it right before, at the beginning of summer break, to be like, hey, what do we really want for this summer? And we last use it at Mother's Day. I can like leverage my, when they're little, they're like, yeah, let's use Mom's Compass. And when they're older, it's like, okay, you need Mother's Day chips here to like make us do this. And I was just looking at it this morning, going like, oh, you know what? Our summer does not look like the things that they were hoping. Even we weren't even thinking of summer yet, but some of the things that they want to do and then haven't really happened yet, and we haven't really come back to it. So not as much as I used to, and I can feel it, right? Like I don't want to impose it on them, but I can feel the difference between when we're kind of like just kind of, you don't want to impose a lot of structure, but it's kind of the same way that a little bit of structure applied to poetry generates amazing amounts of creativity and makes things happen. And so I think our summer could be more awesome, honestly, if we did. But during COVID, we definitely sat down together. You might have seen that video on the website where we sat down once we realized it was not going to be a 2-week closure, and envisioned our time together, and including all the things that had to happen as well as the things that we hoped would happen. And it really made a big difference.
I remember hearing Jon Stewart talk about the whole idea of comedy requires constraints,
Yeah.
creativity requires constraints, so that same thing. So to your point, yes, you've got a bunch of videos on your website, innovatorscompass.org, and we'll have links to all of these resources in our show notes. I also know that you have there some examples of how teachers have used the compass. You talked about lesson planning, which, like I said, Kathy and I have been working on. You talked about students maybe planning their day. What are some other ways teachers have used the compass to support their practice?
It's funny, I actually have this poster that's been behind me. It might look familiar to you, Dave, because you were at South by Southwest meet with me, and you were helping me with this interactive space that we got there. And it actually has a whole bunch of them on it. Dave just referred to, as if you look under the examples tab, pull down has life and family, but also school and college. And so there's a bunch there. So I can sort of rattle some of those off. But in the classroom, it's used for project work, right? It looks straight up like design thinking or scientific method. It looks like a lot of those things. And so it's used for STEM projects, it's used for ELA projects, it's used for mashup projects. Like in the middle are your book characters of you just read, and on the left you're looking at what's happening for them and what matters most for them, and you're imagining ideas, and then look, you're making them in Scratch or out of cardboard or whatever. Like I think they really do need X-ray vision glasses. So there's curricular applications for projects, or I think you're one of the people, a few people have used it for math, like to sort of like look at when you're stuck, or when you just look at what you're doing and iterate your work, whether it's your math problem or the essay you just wrote. So those are a couple of curricular ways. And then those projects also can extend to service projects and work with the community, or projects in the school. So a lot of people around like working on the culture of the classroom or the culture of the school together. Hey, seeing a lot of, someone just came up to me, it really made my day at ISTE, and said we have been using it for the last couple of years to, address kind of social emotional challenges and kind of culture in the school, and it's made a really big difference. And what are we seeing happening, right? What do we all feel like matters most? What are some ways we can do that? But also intimate ones. So I've seen it used by guidance counselors or teachers or administrators with individual students, either proactively, like I saw someone had all their sixth graders, plan their sixth grade year at the beginning of the year. Michael Hernandez, great educator, uses it with his journalism classes. They envision the class together at the beginning of the class, and then you reflect on it again at the end of the year. I do that in my classes too. Hey, why are you all taking this class? This is an elective, right? Why are you here? What matters most to you about it? And halfway through the semester to check in and be like, hey, is that what's actually happening? They'll say things like, we don't have any breaks and it's a 3-hour studio class. Oh, right. Let's try breaks. And then to reflect at the end of the school year, both for themselves and for our benefits, we can make the class better. And reflection can just be observations and ideas for us. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. But then also not as proactively, right? When things go wrong, that's, a time, whether it's individually or interpersonally. There are a lot of compasses I have seen about playground conflicts. It's not like a small number, but really quite a few, in all different ways, with sticky notes or just in conversation. Or there was a really great one where two girls were having, this is a shout out to Don McWilliams in Aurora, Colorado, where two girls were having a conflict and they just silently did a compass together. They're both talking about like some kid who was like bothering them in the playground, and eventually came out through the silent compass that it was each other, and they were able to sort of work out their challenges in this way, and it was just amazing. So a lot of conflicts, cafeteria conflicts, playground conflicts. So I'm working my way from like curricular to SEL,
Mhm.
social emotional learning kinds of things. And then that's stuff that's specifically for the students or with the students in terms of like in planning and reflecting on your school year, and then things that are moving towards ways that they use it with each other. One is around like parent teacher conferences. So Valeria Rodriguez has a great clip on the website about using it. Like she'll start a compass before a parent teacher meeting, like here's what I'm seeing happening with Susie in school, and then hey, what are you seeing happening at home, and here's what seems to me matters most to us here. From what we can tell, what matters most to you for Susie. It's even better if obviously Susie's present and you can do it with her, or not, right? It can be staggered. Some do that same thing and just make sure to like interview Susie first and represent Susie's observations and principles and ideas and experiments. But they can basically work together, right? Teacher and student. I've seen it used for team meetings around a student who's having challenges, like to create an IEP. Hillary Goldwaite-Fowles is someone who does that and really talks beautifully about merging it with a SET framework, SETT, for helping understand students' needs and designing learning plans for them. But same thing, what's happening for them and why. And you can have multiple team members, whether it's the school counselor or any of the professionals that might be working with the student all together and coming to the same page, both about what's happening and where to go forward. And then planning, whether it's curricular planning or planning, for what's going to happen. This is the time of year where people are doing like retreats and planning. Not yet, sorry. Like August will be the time of year when they're starting to plan for the next year. And this is a great time to be like, hey, what do we all see happening for ourselves in the world? Oh my God, AI, all these things, and go, okay, so given all of this stuff, what matters most to us? So teams of educators and administrators who are doing some planning work. And I was doing one of those a few years back. I was helping with a retreat, and then all of a sudden this crisis came up and we just pulled out another compass, like the little right before the school year crisis. They couldn't really think about their strategic planning anymore. They really like, we have to deal with this right now. And so addressing that in the moment, okay, well, here's what seems to be happening. So I just rattled off about 1,000 different ways, but those are all of those. And I think, and just professional guidance. Tara Martin in her book, and also Naomi Harm, two people who wrote books about being administrators, leaders in education, both write about using the compass to sort of understand, especially Tara, about meeting the people and guiding the people in your district or in your school through their careers. What's happening for you, what makes you tick. I do a design your life class also in college, because there are also people who are trying to figure their way forward. So what are your highs and lows? When do you feel like you're most contributing, you're most excited, you're most energized, and least? And so what seems to be your guiding stars? What seems to matter most when you're doing things in a way, in a place that is just really bringing you alive. And what are some ways we can make that happen here? And what are we going to try or cannonball in, as Tara would say? So PD, that's another big one, right? When you have PD rather than, I mean, obviously you can teach the compass, but like using PD time to just, rather than one person teaches everybody else about how to do issue, like, okay, let's see, there's this issue addressing, SEL needs after COVID. Like, okay, well, what do we all see happening? What has mattered to each of us? Like, well, I found what matters most to do this, and what I found matters most to do that. And like, what ideas have we all had to address that? And like, what are some new experiments we're going to try based on what we've just learned from each other? So it's like collaborative co-learning PD. I think I said most of the other ones that are up there. Yeah, capstone projects. Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the reasons, Ella, that when I share with teachers often get barraged with, here's what you should do in this case, here's what you should do, here's a personal behavior plan, and now here's how you should teach math, and here's how you should teach, and those things, I mean, are all pretty specific, and you might be able, like you said, pull some things there. But I will, when I'm working with a district, I'll say, okay, let's look at the compass, and okay, here's the curricular, like you're saying, here's some of the projects. I love showing the one with the video of the playground incident, right? And that's so powerful. I show the one that you were saying about the parent teacher conference, and it's like, this is a tool that you don't have to learn 15 different things. This is something that, because it brings so much of all of these other ideas into it, you can use in all of these different settings. And you don't have to confuse either yourself or the students by saying, okay, now we're going to pull out something totally different. It's no, these are all related to these, like you said, the scientific process, the problem solving in math, the writing process. Oh, the other one I was going to say is, I know both you and I use it as educators to not just to teach through in PD, but to create our PD, right? So I know you use it as you're thinking about, if I'm a leader and I need to do PD, I go through, who are the people involved, right? What have we tried before that's worked and needs work? What is it that we really want to get out of this? What are some ways to try? How am I going to experiment? And my first experiment might be with my spouse saying, here's what I'm thinking about doing, right? And getting some feedback there. But, ultimately we have to try this with real people in the setting, but also then being humble enough to say, I'm going to learn from this, and I'm going to do this better next time, because I'm going to keep going through this process. And I know that we're both also doing it as we write the books, right? We're going through, from a professional learning perspective, what is it that we're doing? How can we think about what we want to share and what's important? Same time, I could keep asking the 5 questions, right, in all these different areas.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, when somebody reaches out to me to do like a PD for them or whatever, like straight up, like I open up, there's a bunch of different formats, like digital ones on the website. I might open an iCompass.me, or just there's a Google Doc that has the questions in it. I'll open up and I'll just start asking, hey, who are the people? I mean, 27 people there, and they're administrators from across the district. There'll be like 5, elementary ones and or whatever. And okay, well, what's happening for them and why? Well, they're kind of worried about AI, and feel like I'll just ask, and what's happened in the past. What have been some of the like best and not so successful retreat or PD experiences you've had, right? And okay, what matters most to you and all the people who are going to be there about this time together, right? And then I will like, did you have any ideas, before you called me? And like, were you really hoping, I really hope she says she'll do, whatever. Well, tell me what those are. They're not going to block my judgment at all. Just let me know. And okay, and I have these other ideas. And then the experiment will be, we'll try to like actually make a potential, like a draft agenda for what it could be. And, I might work with that and so on, but we'll build it together, right, on this first call. And it's funny, in this book that I'm writing, I kind of did, but also kind of didn't do that. And that's why it's taking so long, is that I basically had to start over and realize, what, the principles, what mattered most to me for the tool, those same principles really do have to apply to the book, because this book is going in a different direction, and it's not going to do the work in the world that the tool has.
Mm.
Because it's not as simple and powerful. It's not as positive, right? No matter what, no matter how difficult what people are struggling with is, if this makes it worse, that is not the right step, right? If it makes you feel even worse about doing it, It's not, right? You cannot start there. I'm not saying you have to be my general rule with the tool, everything on this piece of paper is either neutral, like observations, right? You could say problems there, but I mean, well, no, observations, right? Like it's people who do community organizing that really taught me about things like appreciative inquiry and asset-based work, right? Like, no, it's both sides, and you learn from both sides. And it really took like not only doing a separate compass for the book, but looking back at like the compass that has really driven me in this work and realize that the book is a part of that and it has to follow the same ones. And now the book is like flying off my fingertips and hopefully, hopefully, it's going to go a lot better. But yeah, so I do use it all those ways. And the last thing that I want to just say is that it isn't meant to replace all those amazing things out there. So many, this is totally built on the shoulders of giants. And it's meant to replace some of the need. So if these questions really are at the heart and the core of all these ways of making things better when they've really gone off the rails, we can't pull them out proactively all the time, right? Like, as you said, we cannot. When I wrote about being accessible for every person moment, no one person can read all these books, go to all these trainings. No one person can do all of that. So it's not accessible to every person, and not even every moment. Even people who are experts, originators of their own practices. I've had the privilege of working with some of these people, including in me. I'm an expert in design thinking, right? Are not always applying them. Like, there's moments, right? My famous one I tell people about is it was 2:00. This is when I really crystallized what my mission was. It's 2:00 in the morning. My toddler is screaming, and I am screaming back after 20 years of human-centered design. Whatever that is, you might not know, but it's not screaming back at your kid, right? And so it's not accessible to me at that moment either. And so I can't ask anybody else to be able to pull it out. I can't be frustrated when we're doing like this big change project and all of a sudden they hit a stumbling block, like, oh, my administrator would never go for that, and they don't instantly start asking the same questions. Okay, well, let me see that person, let me imagine what's happening for them, and maybe put some question marks on that, like, what is happening for them, why are they like that, why do they have this kind of reactions, do they actually react all the time like that? Actually, they don't. They're not going to start doing that naturally if what I've been teaching them is like 1,000 slides. They're not going to pull that out in that moment. That's a long way of saying that, like, those maps are all really, really valuable, but this is the common compass in the corner of all of those maps for leadership, for personal development, for communities, for whatever. It's the common compass that they all have that you can carry in your pocket and pull out to get oriented and figure out where you are and to get yourself kind of unstuck. And if it's not enough, by all means, go get the map. They're awesome. But maybe if we do it earlier and more often, we will not get as stuck and we won't need to reach for those quite as often.
Or at least there's ways forward, like you said, that instead of feeling stuck. Or you asked me before this, did you need to see the show? And I said no, and I still stand by that. And then you asked about a scene, and I said don't worry, because I know you're busy, and you've been very gracious with your time, and I'll end after this, so thank you very much. But I would, if you do have, I think it's like 8 minutes or so at some point, probably the famous scene from season 1 that most people have seen is the dartboard scene. And in this dartboard scene, Ted talks about be curious, not judgmental. And what you're just saying is that same, right? I want people to instead say, nope, my administrator will never go for this. Would be, instead of being judgmental, be curious. Well, what would my administrator think if they didn't like it? Why might they not, and ask that why. So be curious, not judgmental. So.
And I don't have enough space to say all of that, right? So
No.
I can't describe what people should do. I just have to have them do it and they'll realize the why, right? So what it says on that paper is observations, what's happening and why, real details, different pictures, for the people involved, right? That's what you see. Like, there's only 25 words on this entire thing, right? But if you do it enough, you start to realize, oh my gosh, I'm being curious instead of judgmental. And if I said that, as soon as I use the word don't be judgmental, everyone's going to turn off. They're going to be like,
Yeah.
I already,
Oh yeah.
I'm judgmental, like if you want this to be something that passes from person to person and they voluntarily use it and they can access it because it doesn't have too many words on it, you can't put any of that stuff on it, even though of course it's the why. I like to say this is about being curious, getting clear, getting creative, getting courageous, and being compassionate in the middle. Yes, of course that's why. But if I said that, we'd be like, huh? Ah.
And, and
So
and to be clear, I'm not suggesting don't change a thing. Again, the podcast is all about making the connection. One of our guests was like, they show that scene. They don't have to say a word. They just show that scene in their class with students and said, this is who we're going to be this year, right? We are going to be curious, not judgmental. That's Raj's why for that. So anyways, you've been very gracious with your time, Ella. And as always, this has been wonderful. Thank you very much. Your book that you're working on, any ideas when it'll be ready for us?
no.
Okay.
Because I'm working with a wonderful agent, and the next step is to, find the publisher out there that wants to bring it to life. And then, but I guess I would say the hope would be sometime in 2025.
Nice. We'll be on the lookout. We appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Dave, and everybody listening.